It seems like our ability to open our hearts more and more and more grows as we get older. And the more love there is in one's life, I think the more authentic one is.
Hello, I'm Karen Mellers.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life.
In this episode, it is our very great pleasure to introduce the wonderful actress Hayley Mills. Hayley first came to see me some 17 years ago, and can you imagine my surprise when I saw on my clinic list her name and was thinking, can it be? And sure enough, it was the real wonderful Hayley Mills. And that was the beginning of a long and brilliant relationship. I've been able to introduce Hayley to the integrative approach to health, and she's supported me by being patron of my former charity and by always being prepared to step in and support this integrative healthcare movement, as she is doing now by being our first guest on our podcast. So Hayley hardly needs any introduction, but just to say, she started her filming career aged only 12 with Tiger Bay, starring opposite her father John Mills and Horst Buchholz. And for this she won the Berlin Film Festival's Silver Bear Award. This led her on to a 6-picture deal with Walt Disney, and that included playing both twins in The Parent Trap and the film we've all adored, Pollyanna. For that, she earned a Special Academy Award. She then went on to appear in another of all of our favourite films, Whistle Down the Wind, which was an adaptation of a novel written by her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, and that garnered her a BAFTA nomination for Best British Actress. And on her work goes with TV appearances in The Flame Trees of Thika and Wild at Heart and many others. And Hayley has said that she plans to go on working so far as she can still remember her lines. So with us today is wonderful, warm-hearted, beautiful Hayley. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello again. We are so glad that you are joining us for the next episode of Alive and Loving It. We have a very special one for you today. We are continuing into our deep dive into the health creation principle, being true to yourself. And we have our very first true life story. Over to you, Rosie, to introduce our wonderful guest.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I'm just bursting with excitement because, as you can see, we have with us the beautiful, wonderful, extremely talented Hayley Mills. Welcome, Hayley.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Karen. It's a real privilege to be with you two wonderful girls today and on this podcast. It's very exciting, and it's just really thrilled to be a part of it. So thank you for asking me.
Well, it's so special, Hayley, and you are our very first guest. So you're launching the podcast with us. Our intention is to spread the word to do with all things health and healing and health creation to as many people as we can now. So just to create a context, you and I met way back in 2008 when you came to see me with my doctor hat on. And I just wonder what you'd like to share about what brought you to me, Hayley.
Cancer, in a word. I had been diagnosed in New York on actually April the 18th, which was my birthday.
Gosh.
I had a mammogram, just a routine mammogram. They found something suspicious on my left breast and subsequently on my right breast. And I was, as one is, absolutely in shock. Yes, I mean, just to give you a little backstory, before the God smiled down at me and introduced me to you, Rosy, who changed my life. I was having lunch outside by the Hudson River. I was living in New York, and the phone rang. It was my birthday lunch, and they gave me the news that I had breast cancer.
Oh, Hayley.
And I remember the strange impact of that news, how everything suddenly seemed very bright and brittle and peculiar. And I didn't quite know didn't really know what I felt about it. Then I went back and I talked to my partner, to Fidos, and I told him what had happened. And I realized that there was a part of me that was almost grateful, because I felt now I was going to know what I'm made of. And I felt now I'm going to really join the human race, because, my life has had its ups and downs, as every life does. But I've been very, very lucky, and led, in many respects, a very privileged life. And suddenly I got whacked, like millions of women do.
That's such a fascinating thing to say, that you felt almost like a kind of quickening, and, the fact that life had come into focus, and that, saying that you felt like you were joining the human race and would find out now what you were made of. It's interesting, that sort of paradoxical, almost excitement, that this is something now that you can engage with so deeply. When I first met you, I know you were seeking an integrative medicine pathway because you were on the horns of a dilemma with regard to your conventional treatment. So what was it that brought you to me, Hayley?
Well, things happened very quickly in New York. And before I knew it, I was in surgery. I really hadn't had time to think about it, or learn about it, or read about it. And before you could say Jack Robinson, I'd lost my left breast. And then they were also talking about operating on the right breast, because I had DCIS, I think it's ductal carcinoma in situ.
Yeah.
And I was not clear about that. I'd already spoken to Dr. Rajendra Sharma, who, as you know very well, is a wonderful complementary doctor. And he'd said, maybe you don't need to have that operation. But I was getting a lot of pressure, because you do. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. And the surgeon in New York was wonderful. A wonderful woman, a Dr. Schnabel, and she said, I'm saving your life. I'm saving your life. Don't even have second thoughts about it. So, I'm in surgery, as I say, within days. And my youngest son, had come over to be with me, and it was a whirlwind. I didn't really know what was going on, and then I had some time after the surgery to kind of compose myself, my thoughts, and think about it. And then I knew that the chemotherapy was coming up, and possibly the radiotherapy was coming up. And I was lucky. I had a brief window of time between being in New York and coming back to London. So as soon as I'd recovered sufficiently from surgery, I came back to London, where my partner was and my family are. And I went and had another talk to Rajendra Sharma, and I said, I don't know what to do. And during this time, I'd read quite a lot about cancer and, treatments and alternative treatments. And my instinct was, right from the beginning, what can I do? What can I do for myself to have more input in my treatment and more control, because I felt completely helpless, really, and not in control at all. And Dr. Sharma recommended that I go to see you.
And I think by the time you saw me, you'd had 1 or 2 chemotherapy treatments, but had decided that you could go no further down that path.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The chemo had an instantaneous effect. I lost my hair almost immediately, which for anybody is absolutely, it was almost more devastating than losing my bosom, to lose my hair, because you can hide the fact that you've lost your bosom. And vanity. But the chemo really scared me. And I didn't do well on it. I felt terrible on it. I got into the most terrible state of anxiety every time each new treatment came up. And I would watch this enormous injection, this great hypodermic, which was this thick, being pushed into my veins. And everything in me was resisting it. Yeah. And because everything was resisting it, I knew that it wasn't the right thing for me to be doing. If you're going to take on a treatment, you must take it on 100%.
That's right. And, in integrative medicine, the aim is for people to get the best of both worlds, orthodox, complementary, self-help, psycho-spiritual. And I'm sure having your surgery was extremely wise, but you found your boundary, and a point came where you needed to be true to yourself, and you needed to be authentic, and you needed some support to be true to yourself, which is really the nature of this theme that we're discussing today. But really what fascinated me, and it's very, very kind of you to share your story with us, Hayley. I just want to acknowledge that, because it's brave and it's brilliant, and it's, you have, I know, gone public in the magazine world, and you've been out with your story for some years. But nonetheless, revisiting those times, talking about it is very tender, and we just are so grateful to you, because this will resonate with thousands of people listening to this who are trying to find their own truth in this kind of situation and in other life situations. But I think what fascinated me in terms of, because I know how important it is for us to be true to ourselves, to be well.
Yeah.
When you said to me, that possibly at the time of diagnosis, that it gave you permission to be yourself for the first time in your life. So you were saying to me that growing up as a child star, as the muse of Walt Disney, as the daughter of John Mills, I think you made 6 feature films by the time you were 15. You were effectively doing an awful lot of being the way other people wanted you to be.
Right.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, you put it very well, Rosie. That is exactly right. And I did get to the point of not knowing really who I was, because I think my nature is to please people. I want you to be happy. I want you to be, and people, but what would you like? I say, well, what do you want? I would be happier if somebody else was happy. So I'm a really dreadful tennis player, because I'm much happier if the other person wins. It's more important to them than it is to me. So, which is really pathetic, and makes me a rotten tennis player. But it was also, that came into play when I was struggling to decide what to do, and not to go on with chemo. and my darling family were all saying, "Oh, Hale, you really must, you don't want to mess around. It's save your life. You don't know if this is going to work. The doctors are saying you've got to do this chemotherapy, and yes, you will be, feeling like shit, and it will undermine your health for a long time, blah, blah, blah. But, you've got to get rid of this thing in your system." And I was like, and this is why I just didn't want to talk about it in public for a very long time, because I felt that I was stepping out, stepping off the plank, really, into the open. I didn't know where I was going. And that's why it was so, it was just like a gift to find you, because you were so supportive, and because you talk such common sense, and you helped me to trust myself, to get in touch with myself and find ways of empowering myself. And when I began to feel like that, I felt I was getting on top of the cancer. I really believed what I was doing with your help and guidance. I was killing the cancer in my system as effectively as chemotherapy was.
Wow.
So I did 3 big infusions of chemotherapy, and I spoke to my oncologist at the Royal Marsden and said, I cannot do any more of this. No, I'd done 2, that's right. And I said, I cannot do any more. It's not right for me. And I want to do other things. I want to take more charge of my life. And he said, well, all right. He was very reluctant, but to his credit, he said, just have 1 more. It's a bit like when your child at the table says, I don't want to eat anymore. And you say, go on, 1 more teaspoonful. 1 more, just to satisfy me. So I said, all right. So I had 1 more infusion, and that was it. And then I went off, with you, and it was about my lifestyle, my mental, focus, meditation, visualization, supplements, and the realization that my attitude, my state of mind was crucial to my healing.
Well, it's so perfect to hear you say that. So Karen, let's come to you and see how this is landing for you.
Well, deep honouring Hayley as a fellow people pleaser, because I am. I mean, that really lands with me. And I know for myself how scary it is to put those boundaries in. And I haven't had a cancer diagnosis, but it can be really, well, what I'm witnessing in you is the courage of that moment to go, I am listening to myself and not people pleasing anymore, that has kept you safe for such a long time, and a way of life. I mean, I'm just deeply witnessing that, Hayley, and deeply honouring that in you, because it can be as scary as the cancer diagnosis, I imagine. But it seems to be the thing that I'm hearing was the turning point. It seems so critical for you, that point that you got that empowerment. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Right. It is empowering. The need to, when my family was saying, oh, darling, please, I was teetering on going ahead with the chemo to please them.
Yeah.
To make them feel better.
Yeah.
And I thought, but I didn't know that what I was going to do was going to turn out right. But at the same time, I didn't know going down the chemotherapy route and the radiotherapy route, if that was going to turn out right. I mean, there are no absolutes.
Exactly. And I think, this, you have in fact ended up with a best of all worlds approach, but you've also turned this corner in terms of becoming true to yourself. And, I can hardly imagine what it must have been like in terms of the persona or the identity that you developed as a child and a young woman. Can you give us a glimpse of what that was like, being in Hollywood, being in movies, being in all those roles that you played?
Yes.
And that question of what does that do to your soul? What does that do to your sense of yourself, knowing who you are? I can imagine that there were a lot of thrills, but, how was that being in that world, Hayley?
I think, in the beginning, I loved every minute of it. I adored being on the set. I adored playing different parts. I loved acting. I loved all the people I worked with. Being a child on the set, people were really sweet to me all the time. And obviously they felt they had to be nice to me because they wanted me to get in front of the camera and do what I was supposed to do. But I met fabulous people and I was very, very happy. What happened? And of course, it was a world that I was familiar with because my father, John Mills, a wonderful actor, had been an actor all his life and was an actor all my life, ever since I could remember. So it wasn't as if I moved into an alien world. But then then I started to grow up and think things through for myself. And I became terribly inhibited and full of very self-conscious. And the image that had developed of this person that had my face, but in other respects, I didn't know who they were because it had been taken over by the publicity machine and by the films that I was in and the characters that I played. But then I went home into my bedroom and shut the door and looked at myself in the mirror and I saw who I was. I saw somebody who was a bit, getting overweight, getting a bit chubby, spotty, rather greasy hair, shy, not wanting to go to parties, dreading to disappoint people because this, goodness me, the party can begin now. Hayley Mills has arrived was not the reality at all. I was the one sitting in the corner, just dreading anyone coming up and talking to me, which actually, I've realized now that, I got over it, of course, I sounds like an absolute moron, but I realize now that spiritually, I was not spiritually the right person for fame. It was never what I wanted. Never. I adored the acting. I loved the people. I loved but all that side of things was like, I didn't, it wasn't right for me. There was a tremendous amount of stress involved in trying to be that person.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, trying to be that person. And how many of us, for whatever reason, whether we're being how our parents want us to be, our school teachers, our creed, our country, that we are forcing ourselves to be a certain way. But coming up to the time of diagnosis and that amazing feeling you described of, I called it a quickening, that brightening, the clarity, the excitement. Where have you gone with that, in terms of emerging as yourself through this diagnosis? How do you feel that's changed things for you, Hayley?
Well, it has. Very, very much so. But of course, I suppose all of us, where you get a great realization and you think, wow, like an epiphany, and I think, well, no, that's it. From now on, I'm going to be different. But old habits die hard, and it's easy to slip back and not, slip back to the back foot rather than be on the front foot.
Yeah.
But as far as moving forward, lifestyle, that changed. Lifestyle, I was a vegetarian anyway. I'd been a vegetarian many, many years. But meditating and reconnecting to oneself, to the spirit in oneself, is vital. But having said that, I have to admit, to my shame, that, there have been long periods when I've let that go.
Well, all of us, and that's why we need each other. But Karen, I know you're dancing a lot with this principle of becoming true to yourself. Do you want to reflect on that?
I so relate to that. I mean, I'm pretty new to it actually, and it's still taking a huge amount of courage to say what I want and put a boundary in. And in some situations, I can't. With certain people, I can't. And I think at that moment, I have to remember to be kind to myself, self-compassion and self-love, because that will encourage me to keep doing it. Try it, try. And this time I can't. And yeah, so much compassion for yourself to be able to put those boundaries in. I mean, I'm also, what I'm witnessing, Hayley, is it feels really tender for me, that moment when you said the unknown. I became empowered to say, no, I'm going to listen to where you are being guided. And in that moment, not knowing who you are and having to resource yourself to a point where that starts to be unveiled to you. I mean, that's a huge, huge journey and takes a lot of courage. So hugely witnessing you in that, Hayley, as well, and feeling like you're my inspiration now, because you've been able to speak about it. I'm like, I will keep going with it. I will keep going with it. Thank you.
Amazing. And I think, just to add in there, that this journey is not a journey to take alone. And, Karen has been really clear and strong about the fact that this podcast is about us creating a community so that we can support each other to be authentic.
Right.
And when things are difficult, so I say often to people, it isn't that you're a failure, it's that you need more support. You need more arms around you. You need more encouragement. So, I can hear that's part of you that will blame yourself, but actually it's also about gathering more support. And you told me that you are now doing more spiritual exploration. I love the fact that you just mentioned connecting with the spirit inside you, your own spirit, and with the small s and spirit with the big S.
It's one of those things that's all been in my life. I mean, I encountered the Hare Krishnas in 1983, and I spent a long time talking to a really fabulous guru, and he answered a lot of my questions and questions about karma, and I do believe very much in that, and the spirit. So I've been pursuing that actually and then of course I let things go and I go on my materialistic way, and I'm making movies and bringing up my children, and I don't do the things that I want to do. And every now and again things come back to you, or you pick up a book just randomly, and you think, oh my God, that's exactly the book that I need to read now. And talking to you and Karen is exactly what I need now in my life, because I have now, I'm getting on, seriously on in years. And one of the great things really, I think, is one can drop an awful lot of subterfuge. And that, I know this probably sounds silly, we've got a cat, as you know. Now, she's only 7 months old. This cat has transformed our lives, opened our hearts, made us so much more loving. Life is funnier and more joyful because of this funny little tortoiseshell creature, and it seems like our ability to open our hearts more and more and more grows as we get older. And the more love there is in one's life, I think the more authentic one is.
Beautiful.
That's who we are, really. We're operating from love. You've operated from love, Rosy, right from the very beginning. Your generosity and your interest and your support, your care and concern for people is absolutely wonderful. And I hope you live forever.
Well, where I got the courage to live in love was through the meeting of Pat Pilkington at the Bristol Cancer Help Centre.
Yes.
Who co-founded it with Penny Bron, and she was the most loving, generous, kind person you can possibly imagine. But the entire ethos of the centre, her husband Christopher was a spiritual healer, and he was quite introverted, so him being true to himself was just coming out as a spiritual healer, so practicing the ministry of healing as opposed to the ministry of the word. And everybody in that centre, we had a crew of 79 people. Everybody was coming from the place of love. And people would walk in and say they felt they'd lifted a metre off the ground with the wave of love that reached them. And in the healing, the spiritual healing, that is a channeling of pure love light to people. So the courage, to be true to that one's loving nature,
Yes.
and to keep making the choices for love, even if it's uncomfortable, and that's the journey, isn't it? I'm so
Yes.
glad that you've said that, and that it's happening. And I love the fact that you're here getting older.
I love the fact that I'm here, but not necessarily getting older.
Well, it's 17 years, Hayley.
Yeah.
17 years since we met. So let's just celebrate. Let's celebrate your success.
Wonderful.
What a joy.
I really, really do believe absolutely that there are times when we are guided and when the right people come to us, because that's what we need. The right book comes to us, the right animal comes to us, the right things come to us, and we struggle away, don't we? I've got to make this decision. It's so hard. I don't know what to do. And sometimes we would just let go and things just fall into place. Yeah. Not always when you look at America, but things will get better.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah. And quite recently you published your beautiful biography.
Yes. I worked with my son, Crispian, who was tremendously helpful to me and gave it a structure and asked all the right questions. And I only told a fraction, because I only told a fraction of my life. I just told about, when I was young. So I didn't talk about, meeting you, cancer and all that. I didn't go into.
No. Quite right too. I love the fact you said earlier to me that you'd forgotten the name of your consultant and you'd even forgotten the stage of your illness. That's the way, Hayley. The fact that in the holistic model, we say that on which you focus expands. Right. And so you've chosen to shift your focus away from that into life and into the loving and the giving and the acting. So your beautiful biography is available. Remind me the name, Hayley.
It's called Forever Young.
Forever Young. Beautiful. Yeah. In terms of what the future's holding, where you, because I know you've been recently doing the Wheel of Time.
I did a movie that came out last year, and I played an FBI profiler, and I looked like Grim Reaper in it, but it was it was great fun to make a movie. And I like doing art. Whatever comes along, I'll do whatever comes along. I just like working, there's a play I'm looking at, and little bits and pieces. But I've got 5 grandchildren and a wonderful partner and 2 fantastic sons, and I'm very grateful to have the time and the health to enjoy my life at this time of my life.
Wonderful.
This beautiful spring. I've never seen a more beautiful spring. And that is one of the great advantages of getting older, is you appreciate things that before you just took for granted. Now you appreciate it.
Yeah.
So much more.
Yeah, well, you have come so alive, and it's absolutely shining out of you, Hayley. I just wonder, Karen, any last reflections or thoughts?
Well, one for you, Rosie, is I can feel your love while you're talking to Hayley, and I can feel how tender it is for you to be sat here 17 years later with a client
Yeah.
who looks as alive and loving it as Hayley Mills. I mean, I want what you're taking, Hayley, definitely. And then, really, just a final reflection is that I strongly believe there is nothing more attractive than authenticity. And
Yeah.
to sit here in this space with both of you who are just shining in your authenticity and your unique expression of life, I wish that for the world. Because there are some younger people in my life that feel that they don't, I'm getting tender now, they feel that they don't fit into certain structures, that they've got to be a certain way, or there's something not right with them. And I am full of encouragement for those younger people to say, be guided, connect into yourself and live the way that you want to live, because that will be the best outcome, not only for your own health, but for the health of the community, for the health of the world. So that's my wish as we finish this. And I just thank you so, so much, both of you, for sharing that really intimate and loving story. I am honoured to be in this space to help it get out there. Really honoured.
Beautifully said, Karen. Bless you for all that. It's so true. It's so true. It's when we're all struggling to be something we're not doing it very well, you know, to be inauthentic, then you're sort of irrelevant. What's the point? Just, you know, and it's a struggle to find out who you are. And we're so critical of ourselves when we're very young. You know, and if we could all find, if Rosie could just be cloned.
Well, it's happening. You probably know that I now train people to become health creation mentors.
Yes.
To walk the journey, to keep giving that, you know, reinforcement, reminder, and motivation, because every single one of us slips. You talk about, you know, slipping back. We all have a default that we can slip back to, but we need each other to encourage ourselves to be real and to keep making those choices that are true to ourselves. So I'm going to give you the last word, Hayley. If there was any message you wanted to give to others out there who are perhaps being diagnosed today or tomorrow, any message you'd like to give?
This is a big one. This is a big one. I would say trust yourself and follow your instincts and find somebody who can really, really support you, because it's a very lonely experience. And you feel so bad for your family and close friends. You really need, that's what was so wonderful to have you in my life, Rosie, because I could talk to you about things, you know, and that I couldn't talk to anybody else about. I didn't want to burden them. And they didn't have the experience or, you know, the knowledge. And actually, it is strange, but I think they may find that they will be grateful for having that cancer experience, because it is an opportunity to change your life and look at things again and yourself again and everything. You appreciate life in a way you never did before. And, you know, there are tremendous positives as well as all the negatives. There really are. Your relationships become much stronger, and your connection and appreciation and love of life, you're more aware of. Whatever the outcome, you know, I think the journey is the important thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I know you recently had a birthday.
Yes, another one.
And a much, much, much happier one than that day, fateful day in New York.
Yes.
And we wish you every success, every ounce of joy that your heart can hold, and every bit of love that your heart can hold, Hayley. Thank you so much for being with us today, and just enjoy many more beautiful years of full and happy life.
Thank you, darling Rosie. Good luck with this wonderful, wonderful podcast. And Karen is a marvelous, marvelous partner for you.
Really, thank you so much, Hayley.
Lots of understanding and great love there. So, I'm thrilled that podcast is happening, and I will be tuning in avidly. Good luck, love to you and all your listeners and viewers, whoever they are. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
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 This episode is very kindly supported by Broughton Sanctuary, which is a beautiful estate in Yorkshire, just outside Skipton. It's home to the UK's leading wellbeing centre, Avalon Wellbeing, and on this very ancient land, they host deeply transformative retreats that hold space for anyone who is ready to start living true to themselves and needing a space to enable that to happen. This place is very, very dear to my heart because it kickstarted my journey when I lived there for 5 weeks in November 24 after selling my home of 21 years. And I started my nomadic journey to find myself after the kids had left home and to find my new community. I have attended retreats and I've also hosted them at Broughton, and there is really no better place to give yourself the space you need to stop, listen to what you need in your life now, and to follow your heart. This October, one of their signature retreats is the Sense Retreat, and it's hosted by a dear friend of mine called Kirsty Allen and her community, the If Crowd. Kirsty is proud to be a highly sensitive person, and she is completely a visionary in redefining sensitivity as a strength, something that is really needed in the world now. And instead of sensitivity being seen as a weakness or people who are sensitive not feeling like they belong in the current structure of the world, Kirsty and her Sense Revolution is welcoming you in to Broughton Sanctuary and Avalon Wellbeing for the Sense Retreat in October, to connect with other people who feel the same and together find the strength to realize that there is nothing wrong with your sensitivity and that you deserve to live your life being true to yourself. I am very proud to be supporting the Sense Retreat, and Broughton have very kindly offered a 10% discount to any of our listeners that attend the Sense Retreat or any of their retreats. So you can visit them at broughtonsanctuary.co.uk/retreat. And when you book your place, use the code KM10OFF and receive a 10% discount from our dear friends at Broughton Sanctuary.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and shown you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosie. I mean, we have to remember transformation begins with love, and that's self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
that is the truth. And we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community, check out our trainings and our services and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like to see us interview, the questions you want to ask, and get answered through the contact page on our website, aliveandlovingit.org.
I can't wait to read them. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be, always. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.